is up? Thank you for coming to my channel, Prison POV. Shout out to the joiners, shout out to the point of view crew, and trip on this. I finally sat down and watched this piece of garbage that Rascal from Homie Hangout put out.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And I'm going to talk about how my experiences in California Department of Corrections over close to 10 years kind of made me racist, man. You know, or at least much closer to that than as a kid I would have ever imagined.
This dude really did sit down and make a 30-minute video straight up disrespecting the woodpile. That's all it was 30 minutes of straight up disrespect. And I'm going to call him out on it. Now, I made notes to refer to because I didn't watch that video and commit it to memory. Hell to the no. I didn't watch that thing and memorize everything he said, so I come on here and speak freely. I don't want to commit it to memory. I'm going to forget I ever seen it. As soon as I make my video, upload it, bro, so it can never happen. That's how much I hate this video. It's trash. Now, I'm going to ignore the first several minutes when he just says the whiteboards are dirty, the woods are on biker status, they're not clean, they have poor hygiene. You're a fat mouth liar. In the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, I don't care what yard, what dorm, what gym, what block, what barracks you go to, there's always going to be a white kitty. Mandatory. The woods have rules, bro. Shower once a day. Mandatory workout. Brush your teeth. Clean clothes. Roll up your mattress during the day. We got all the same rules as everybody else. There's no way that you can collectively say, oh, all the white dudes are on biker status, they're all dirty, they have poor hygiene, calling you a liar. Aside from that, though, I'm going to pick it up right here at the 5-minute mark when he tells this goofy little story about some wood that comes walking up to him with all the swastikas and all the stuff, all the shit is how he worded it. So he has all these political white boy tattoos, comes up to Rascal and is like, what are you? I don't know why a white guy would just walk up to another white guy and say, what are you? I think we're missing part of the story. But anyway, to hear him tell it, some wood comes up and says, what are you? And Rascal says, I'm a norteño. And then the wood starts to say, no, you're not. And then apparently Rascal cracks him in his mouth, but he stops there. But then what happened, though? You just told us that you, being a norteño, cracked some wood. What happened after that? Did he beat your ass? Was there a riot? Was there a melee? Did you punch him and he just grabbed his jaw and walked away? It sounds like a lie. I'd like to hear more details. But so far, I'm not buying it. Not buying it.
You know, and it was my first day in there. And this wood comes up and he had all the warbird and the swastika and Nazi, all the shit, right? Had all the shit. And he came up to me and he was looking kind of aggressive. And he wasn't the first person I talked to, but he was the first person I fired on. And he says, hey man, what are you? Right? All tough guys. And I was like, I'm a norteño, 150 pounds, 19 years old. And he said, man, no, you're not. And before he can get the word not out, I was on his snot box. Bing. And not because I was a tough guy, right? I was violent, but more out of fear. You know, I let this dude get the best of me. So, anyways, that's a story for another day, but that set a tone. And
I'm not buying it. Not buying it. But here's one of my favorite parts, bro. At the 9-minute mark, around 9:25, he starts talking about sex play. Now, sex play is pretty common. The Woods do it. Southsiders do it. Sex play is nothing more than just horseplay with a little bit of this sexual innuendo thrown in. It's for jokes. It's to be funny. You might be, a homeboy might say, hey, where's my cup? Be like, I got your cup right here hanging, bro. That type of shit, man. Sex play, everybody does it. But according to Rascal, he says this. He's like, the norteños can't sex play. He didn't say they didn't want to.
And so I go to prison, right? I'm in Solano. It's my first main line, Solano, level 3. And I'm not going to run through every scenario, but I'm going to point out some highlights. And a few things came to mind there, right? A few things I learned. One was a lot of the white dudes had a different style than us, learn the term biker status, and if you've been to prison in California, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't come up with the shit. But, if a homeboy came out for chow and his shirt was kind of wrinkled, or you see a little dust bunny by his door, you're like, damn, fool, you on biker status or what? I'm not saying all bikers are dirty, just saying that was the stereotype, that was the language, right? And I would see the Woods, and a lot of them were sex playing and grabbing ass and hygiene not really up to par. And for a lot of us, like when it comes to the personal hygiene stuff, And I think this is just as true for Southsiders, right? That shit was important even on the streets. Looking sharp, creased up. Clothes weren't always expensive. We weren't into fashion, so to speak, at the time, but or a lot of us weren't. But nevertheless, when your clothes look, they look sharp, they look clean, and so just different culture, right? Coming from a different space. And there was a few homeboys that would come through that didn't have the best hygiene habits, but they learned real quick that was non-negotiable. So just seeing their get down and how they talk to each other, and like I said, the sex play, and the Northerners can't sex play. You can't even sex play in the cell. Your cellie come out and tell his channel, and you wind up getting in trouble. And I know the Southsiders are pretty similar, from my experience at least of seeing them, and from what I've heard. So they just had a different get down. Dudes be laying on the grass with no shoes on, and I know some of this is because it's a level 3, right? I was on a level 4. It did look a little different over there, but that's where I started to look and realize, like, these dudes got a different program, and I never thought to claim wood in prison. I could have, right? There was nothing stopping me, but I it never considered it. It was never an option for me. I've been a North Daniel all my life, and so why would I go to prison and change that, right? Or not be that? I know some people who have, you know, and teach their own. That's their own stories, and that's fine. But for me, it it was never an option. But I would look at how the Woods would program, and I'd be like, damn, fool, I'm on the right team. Like I couldn't live with these dudes. I couldn't endure that type of existence, the lack of discipline and just all the shit, man. And I'm not saying, just it should be clear, but I'm not saying that this is true for all white dudes that have done time in California, or even that it was true for every white dude on that yard. I'm making generalizations and I'm using stereotypes, but rooted in what I observed and my own experiences, because generalizations, what's that? And stereotypes is a lot of times what racism and prejudice is born out of to begin with. So don't come hit me with the not all these people, not all those people. That's not what this is about.
There's no way that you can collectively say, oh, all the white dudes are on biker status, they're all dirty, they have poor hygiene, calling you a liar.
And I'm not saying, just it should be clear, but I'm not saying that this is true for all white dudes that have done time in California, or even that it was true for every white dude on that yard.
There's no way that you can collectively say, oh, all the white dudes are on biker status, they're all dirty, they have poor hygiene, calling you a liar.
But I have been asked countless times since I came on YouTube, right? What's it like being a white northerner? What's it like being a mixed northerner or a light skinned northerner? However people want to put it, right? Um, how do they treat you, and was there issues, and did you feel like you had to prove yourself more, and did you have to prove yourself in the streets? And I will say, on the streets, I never felt I had to prove myself more because of what I looked like. I always felt I had to prove myself because I was representing something, and I was with other people oftentimes, right? I'm with my homeboys. And so, yeah, I always have something to prove, but it's because I was a gang member, not because I was a gang member that looked the way I looked, right? So, anyway, I'm watching this stuff and I'm like, these dudes is foul, bro. Like I couldn't hack it, right? Not at all.
Okay. Then he goes on to say he went to Solano and he sees Woods laying around in the yard with no shoes on. You're a fat mouth liar. You are a fat mouth liar. Bro, I want anybody else who's done prison time in California to please leave a comment. Hit me up on Instagram. Let me know if you ever seen a Wood walk around with no shoes. I mean, that's a straight up lie from the pits of hell, bro. You would get smashed if you're a white boy, especially a level 3, and you hit the yard, even a level 1, and you take your shoes off. Bro, we're booted and suited. There's no way you can get away with taking your shoes off. Why would you even want to? Dude, he's lying. He's trying to belittle the Woods, bro. Then he said, I never claimed Wood in prison, but I could have. Nobody would have stopped me. We would have stopped you, rascal. What do you mean you could have claimed Wood in prison? He already said he was a North Daniel on the streets. And then he goes, when I came to prison, I didn't claim Wood, but I could have. No one would have stopped me. You would have got stopped. We don't let North Daniels come in off the street and start claiming Wood. Then he even went so far as to say, I know people who have. You know people who have what, rascal? You know people who have claimed North Daniel on the streets and then come in and claim Wood? And did you handle it? Did you allow it? That sounds like some rancor. That sounds like some PCSNY behavior to be claiming a gang on the street, a Hispanic gang, and then come in and claim wood. Now, if we heard about it, we would have handled it. Sounds like you didn't, though. Sounds like you agree with that sort of behavior. I don't understand it, bro. I don't understand it. Then at the 12-minute mark, he said, I'm looking around thinking these dudes are foul. So he's looking around the wood pile, saying these guys are foul. Oh, but not all of them. Yes, all of them, bro, because you said these dudes. Are you just trying to say only a couple of them are foul? He talks out of the side of his neck. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. The whole video, he'll say something very disrespectful about the woods and then try to back it up. Oh, not all of them. Yes, all of them. You're disrespecting the whole wood pile. You're saying we're foul. Another part of the video, he said we're clowns. He also said him, being a white Norteño, was treated the same as a Hispanic Norteños. Fat-mouth liar. You're full of it. Cap! I call BS. There's no way a white Norteño is going to come in and get treated like the Hispanics. Sorry, it doesn't happen. I'll tell you what, Rascal was in prison. He was a crash test dummy. Guarantee it. Guarantee they saw that dude coming. Oh, white boy, old wannabe. He comes rolling in there and doesn't even know who he is or what he's about. Confused. And they put a filetto in his hand. Homeboy told him to handle it. He was on the front line by orders, not by choice. Dude was a crash dummy. I guarantee it. Here we go. From the 13 to the 16-minute mark, dude, it gets really goofy. He starts talking about this sacramaniac who had the keys of the yard.
And then another situation, I think I've mentioned this before. There was a dude from Sacramento, right? He was a sacramaniac. Had the keys to the yard over the Sacramento white guys. And I remember their little item of clothing they would use was there was these trucker hats that were like yellow on the front, right? They were white, but they had yellow on the front. I think maybe even the bill was yellow. And I guess you get them on Canteen, so I don't know where the fuck they came from, to be honest. But all the Sacramaniac dudes wore those hats.
I don't even know if he knew where he was going with it, but it sounded real dumb to be talking about this dude's hat and just never even finish your sentence or thought. What about the hat, dude? And first he's going off talking about dude's hat. Going on and on about his hat. I'm waiting for the punchline. I'm waiting for the joke. It never came. What is he talking about? This dude from Sacramento, a Sacramaniac, had the keys of the yard. He had this hat. It was a trucker hat. I don't know where they got the hat. They didn't sell them on the commissary, but him and all the other Sacramaniacs wore these hats. And then I'm like, okay, and then what? What about the hat? He just stopped. I don't know if he lost his train of thought.
Right. A lot of them were dirty, but all of them wore those hats. So anyways, this cat Hot Rod, had the keys for them at the time, and he, just like a lot of Woods in prison, they had all those tattoos that I'm talking about, right? All the symbols and the germs, shit, all the shit. But he also had Irish pride tattooed on his lower back. And I saw him one day in the day room for myself, and he was reading like a big old Irish history book. And then he comes out, it was days after that, but at some point later, he winds up getting at his people and requires them all to cover up their swastika, right? And had to cover it up with something.
So he says this dude from Sacramento, this Sacramaniac who had the keys and he wore this hat, start reading a book about the Irish, and then all of a sudden it made all the other Woods go cover up their swastikas. Fat-mouth liar. That didn't happen. I know for a fact it didn't happen. Please, if anyone's ever heard of anything like this happen in prison, hit me up on Instagram, bro. Rascal, you need a cosigner, dude. I need more people to tell me about this shiznit. No way a key holder is going to go into prison and start telling all the Woods to cover up their tattoos that they earned. And they wouldn't cover them up if they were told to. They would have removed that Sacramaniac and they would have got his ass. They're not going to go around covering up.
And requires them all to cover up their swastika, right? And had to cover it up with something because he learned that in reality, the real Nazis would not have accepted you as an Irish person. Like, that was funk. And you would not have been one of the cool kids in the club, right? But he didn't know that. He learned that. And while I got respect for him over that, it almost made me, I lost a little bit of respect for this whole white supremacist narrative and imagery that gets put up in prison by a lot of Woods. I actually kind of lost respect for him because I was like, damn, for you look like you're so committed to these beliefs. But then you read a book and realize that your beliefs are not rooted in anything fucking historical, and you're not actually the supreme guy according to the folks that kill people to be supreme guys. And And then you totally switch up, but you still rock with your shit though.
And I don't want to get into this too much. I talked about it in the live, but when you see woods with swastikas, they stole that symbol from Hitler. Actually, Hitler stole it from the Hindus. The swastika was around long before Hitler. And just because you see a wood with a swastika does not mean he's fighting Hitler's battles. You ever heard about a wood that wants Poland to be part of Germany? You ever seen a wood in California prison that was mad at the Jews? No, woods don't care about the Jews. Woods don't care about Poland. Therefore, the swastika is just a symbol that we borrowed and we took for ourselves to represent, homie. The symbol that we use has nothing to do with Hitler. So all this dude reading an Irish book, now suddenly got current lie, bro. Straight up cap. And then he goes on to say, I respected it. I respected it. You respected what? You respected seeing people cover up their gang insignias, tattoos they earned. Oh, I really respected when I saw them cover up. Oh, but I lost respect for the others. You never had respect for any white boy.
While I didn't see myself as better than anybody else, I absolutely believe that the Norteño program was the program, right? Like that was the elite program. That was a program that not a lot of people could do, right? And it had the most discipline and this beautiful movement with this rich history and all this other stuff, right? And I was full-fledged into that, right? And so coming from that mindset and viewing myself that way and viewing my group that way, then I'm looking at this group like, you guys are some fucking clowns. And again, things would change. You know, I wound up getting into it with the Woods in Solano. That was actually my only physical confrontation in prison with the whites.
I'll tell you what, bro. I'll tell you exactly what the problem is. Rascal's scared of Woods, dude. Rascal is scared of Peckerwoods, homie. And if you could, his mouth, not mine, he says it loud and clear if you could read between the lines. He's fearful, homie. Period. At the 17-minute mark, he goes on to call us clowns. Oh, but not all of them. Then he said he got into it with Woods at Solano. And look at, but that's the only fight I've ever gotten into with the Woods.
I wound up getting into it with the Woods in Solano. That was actually my only physical confrontation in prison with the whites, but wound up getting into it with them, and that's because this NLR dude came.
Well, what about the 5-minute mark? The guy who you punched, the guy who had all the swastikas on him, the guy who came up and said, what are you? And you said, I'm a Norteño. And he said, no, you're not. So you punched him. Didn't that, I mean, you just said that happened at the 5-minute mark. Then the 17-minute mark, you're talking about a riot. You got to Solano. That's the only time I ever fought with the Woods. Well, what about the 5-minute mark? And did that turn into a riot? Well, I'm really curious what happened. That little story at the 5-minute mark when the guy said, you're not a Norteño, and you punched him. I'm really curious what happened after that.
You know, it was my first day in there, and this Wood comes up, and he had all the warbird and the swastika and Nazi, all the shit, right? Had all the shit. And he came up to me, he was looking kind of aggressive, and he wasn't the first person I talked to, but he was the first person I fired on.
Did it lead to a riot? It seems like it would. I mean, in Kern County, homeboy, places I've been, if a Norteño punches a Wood, it's on and cracking. It'd be a riot. No? Okay. From the 17-minute mark to the 19-minute mark is just a bunch of blah, 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 blah. I can't even make heads or tails out of it. Talk about some NLR dude. But this NLR dude had good hygiene, he says. Yeah, good hygiene. And he was polite, but he was full of shit.
Wound up getting into it with them, and that's because this NLR dude came. You know, and he got them all ruffled up. And he just looked like a white Southsider. A big-ass white Southsider. But a white Southsider. And then I even learned the name, and I thought it was a joke at first. And was like, you can't be serious. Like, that's about as ridiculous as the dudes on the SNY side call themselves BBC, right? Like, just, man, you got to rethink this better. But he was sharp, creased up, clean, hygiene up to par, mannerisms and all that stuff. He was elite in that sense, right? But he was way more on the bullshit than a lot of these Woods were too. Hence, them hanging out on our side of the yard.
And the Woods were on their side of the yard, like, because a riot turned out. This dude from NLR started a riot because he was on the Norteño side of the yard. He didn't even really finish his thought. He just kind of threw that out there. And NLR would keep clean hygiene, nice clothes, but full of shit. Got everybody pumped up to go to the Norteño side of the yard, and then a riot happened.
It's them hanging out on our side of the yard and me telling them that, you know, you probably want to do your business over there with your people. And that getting blown out of proportion into a conflict when that had happened a dozen times before that, and nobody had tripped. It was common courtesy, bro. Like, you don't belong over here, homie. Do it moving. And so, anyways, there's a bunch of little side stories in here, and I don't want to make this, you know, an hour-long video, but
apparently, In 1912, he said, some woods were saying, well, okay, yeah, I like this part too. Then he goes to Salinas Valley. And this is at the 19-minute mark. And some woods see him. And they say, hey, what's up? And he ignores them. Why? Why would you ignore him? Picture this, guys. You're in prison. You're a white Northanian. And you're walking. And some woods say, hey, hey. And you just ignore them. Why? Why don't you turn around and say, what's up? I'm a Northanian. My name is Rascal. I'm from this part of town. You just ignore them, hoping they'll go away. Sounds like you're scared.
But so these different little things kind of impacted my view. And then I go to Salinas Valley, and you don't see white dudes hanging out in the yard with no shoes on. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot more disciplined environment, and I think that has to do with the fact that it's a level 4 yard. But a lot of it's still kind of weird shit, right? And nowhere in this do I mean that the woods were punked. The most vicious stabbing I ever saw in prison was in Salinas Valley, and it was a white dude stabbing another white dude. It's just, it left me thinking some type of way. And when I pulled up to Salinas, I got followed by some woods, right? And they were like, what's up, Wood? What's up, Wood? And I just ignored them. It wasn't the first time that somebody had made a mistake. So I ignored them, but they kept going, and they had like a chip on their shoulder. And so finally I was like, ain't no fucking Wood, huh? What are you? And then they look mad.
Hey, hey, and you just ignore them? Why? Why don't you turn around and say, what's up? I'm a Northanian. My name is Rascal. I'm from this part of town. You just ignore them?
And so finally I was like, ain't no fucking Wood, huh? What are you? And then they look mad. Like, and I was like, I'm a Northanian. Oh, well, we think you're moving into a white cell. What are you going to do? You're going to white cell. And just, again, just behaving in ways that we, right, as Northerners, just didn't get down and didn't behave. And since I already had kind of this chip on my shoulder, and I can tell that they had a chip on the shoulder with me, all these little instances just kind of fed into that.
I've never ignored anybody in prison when they've said to me, hey, who are you? What's your name? Or, hey, what are you about? What do you, when someone addresses you in prison, you don't ignore them unless you're just flat out scared. So at the 19-minute mark, he says he's Woods, and he says, I ignored him. I just ignored him. But he's like, and they kept coming. Yeah, they kept coming because you ignored them. Maybe they thought that you didn't hear them. He's like, I ignored them, man, but they kept coming. They kept coming. And they had a chip on their shoulder. Sounds like you had the chip. You're the one ignoring them. They're just reaching out to you, giving you a greeting. Oh, excuse them for assuming you're white. I mean, because you are white. Excuse them for assuming you're a Wood. You should have corrected them. You should have told them I'm not a Wood, but you ignored them. But they had the chip on their shoulder. Sounds like you're the one with the chip. And then here's another thing I can't hear what he's saying, like he has a mouthful of dick. Around the 19-minute mark, we've told that stupid story about Salinas Valley, some Woods seeing him, they're trying to get at him, he's ignoring them. Then finally they say, we think you're moving into Wessa. Dude, I rewinded it 5 times. I put my, with the words on the screen, closed caption, I couldn't make out what he's saying. But apparently the Woods are saying to him, we think you're moving into Mesa. He goes, they're behaving in ways that's weird to me. You're a J-Cat, dude. What's weird about them seeing you and issuing you a greeting, but you just ignore them? And they say, I'm a Northanian. Oh, we thought you were moving into Wessa, whatever the hell that means. And he's like, yeah, they're out of line. You're a J-Cat. At the 21-minute mark, he starts swinging on the Southsider's nuts. And this is where he starts showing his true colors, that he's scared of the woodpile. Because at the 21-minute mark, when he's talking about the Southsiders swinging on their nuts, they're a lot like us. You know, I went in there hating Southsiders, but then I start noticing they're not like us. They're clean and they're solid and they have good programs and you know, and they work out, you know. But look what he says. He said they never talked to me crazy or looked at me crazy. Did you catch that? At the 21-minute mark, he says the Southsiders never looked at me crazy or never talked to me crazy. That's why I like them.
It's a trip because, like I said, I came into prison conditioned to hate Southsiders. Yet my time in prison caused those walls to kind of get cracked a little bit, right? And this is way before in the hostilities. We were very much on different teams. Everybody knew where they stood. But I saw a lot more similarities with them, you know, and there's differences, of course. But I saw more similarities, and Southsiders never talked to me crazy in prison. They never looked at me crazy in prison, right? And not because I'm some fucking imposing tough guy, you know, they conducted themselves for the most part like Northerners conducted themselves, right? Courteously, respectful. and we'll blast the shit out of you if it comes down to it. But up until then, we'll be polite and respectful. And they kept their areas clean. They had some discipline. Like, so it was a trip that going through prison, the group I went into prison to hate. Again, I wouldn't say I came to like at that stage. I wouldn't say I came to like Southsiders. We was rivals. We was rivals. But I came to have a respect for them that I had nothing of, when I went in there.
What are you saying? You're saying the Woods did look at you crazy? The Woods did talk to you crazy and you didn't handle it? I mean, what's up? You're talking about you only got that one fight, the one riot over the NLR guy. And then you got in that fight, the 5-minute mark, when that guy questioned you about who you are. But then you say here that the Southsiders never looked at you or talked to you crazy, insinuating the whites did. Well, bro, if the whites looked at you crazy and talked to you crazy and you didn't handle it, that's on you. Sounds like you're a big old puss to me. So that's what this is all about, I guess. That's what this is all about, is white boys looking at you crazy and talking to you crazy, and it just put fear into you. Now you don't like them. At the 21-minute mark, more swinging on the Southsider nuts, saying how clean they are. They kept their area clean. He likes them a lot. At the 22-minute mark, he starts talking about blacks. Instead of saying they're dirty, he just says, oh, they didn't take care of themselves. Translation, he's calling them dirty. He's saying they're not perfect, but the difference is they never pressed me or looked at me sideways.
And we're super respectful and courteous, and it changed my view on them. But prison, I didn't go into prison feeling any type of way about white people or anybody else. But prison sure changed that. And there's going to be some who are going to say, well, what about the brothers? How come, you're not saying this video about the black? How come you weren't going to get racist about the blacks? Because within the blacks, they're a fractured car, and some of those brothers don't take care of themselves and act certain ways and this, and all that is true. All that's fucking true. I think the difference is I never felt on the streets or in prison, no brothers was ever pressed me, right? Ever looked at me sideways, our groups had a mutually respectful relationship. Plus, I had a familiarity from the streets, right? I grew up around predominantly black and brown folks with some polys and some Asians and some white folks sprinkled in here and there. So I was familiar to them. They were familiar with me, and there was no issues in prison, and they never seemed like they had a dislike of me.
Difference is they never pressed me or looked at me sideways. So here we go. He's calling the Woods dirty, saying the Woods are on biker status. They have a horrible program. They're weak. They don't work out. They're not solid. Then he tries saying the blacks the same thing. Same with them, he says, but he uses different language. Instead of saying they're dirty, he says, oh, they didn't take care of themselves. And they have their own problems too. But the difference between the whites and the blacks, he's saying the blacks never pressed me or looked at me sideways. And the Woods did. That's why we're here. That's why he made this video. That's why he's racist against Woodpile, because they looked at him crazy. They talked to him crazy. They didn't like the fact he was a freaking race traitor and that he didn't want to be a white boy. He was a norteño. And bro, Woods have a problem with that. It's the way it is.
And I ran across some Woods when I was out there, and it was cool, right? But it, a little bit of a barrier there. And that barrier was probably more on my part, because in the streets, there's not a lot of Woods. Like I said, in the Bay Area, at least the more urban parts of it, there ain't a whole lot of Woods pushing that agenda on the streets. Not back then, not that I saw, right? In the late 80s and the 90s, no. But I was, because of my experiences in prison, I was reserved. Like, you never know. And I tripped more off them than I did off of Southside, right? I'd see a white dude in the grocery store, and he looks, he's got some tattoos, looks like they're prison tattoos, and I got my eye on him, like, those are the ops. And yet I'm over on Monument, where there's Southsiders, if anybody's familiar with Concord, and I see little Southsiders, and I was like, look at dudes out here doing their shit, right? Or on their thing. They still here, huh? Okay. And so it was weird. I mean, I didn't come home banging, but how much my mindset had shifted in this time.
And I guarantee if there's ever going to be a riot between the Woods and Norteños, they're coming for you first. You had the bullseye on you. That's why you don't like Woods, because they don't like you. At the 25-minute mark, he said he gets out of prison and he'd be at the store and he's looking. He says, I'm not looking for Southsiders, I'm looking for Woods. So when he gets out of prison, he's going to the store. While he's in the store, he's looking around for white boys. Are there any white boys in here? Are there any white boys in here? Am I in danger? Bro, he must have got beat so bad by them in prison. He gets out and he's literally scared of them. And he's like looking behind every corner. Where are they? He even calls them ops. Where are the woods? Where are the ops? He's looking for them, bro. At the 26-minute mark, he goes up on some stupid story about being at the hospital.
And I was at the hospital. I was staying in Sacramento area, right? I was separated from my kid's mom already. And my daughter had to go to, in fact, I did have a time, but my daughter had to go to the hospital, right? One of my daughters. And so we're at this hospital and she had to get transferred out somewhere else. So we're up like maybe Roseville or something. I forget exactly. We were there all night. It was a lot, but this is during the virus, right? So you could only have one parent in the room at a time. The other parent had to wait out in the car. But when she went in to get her procedure, there was a waiting room out there that both parents could wait there. It was social distance because it was a huge room and a very, very small number of people there. So we were both able to be inside at the same time to be able to see her for a minute when she first was waking up. So I'm in this room, and like I said, it's a large room. And we got to take an elevator up to where she's at, but it's all locked off, closed off. It's the vid, Holmes. It was all secure. And so I'm in there with my kid's mom, and I see this dude, right? And he looks like me, might even been a little bit lighter than me. Razor bald head. I shave my head, but I don't use a razor. And I use clippers, right? So he shaved his head with a razor, and I could see some tattoos on the neck, but he was wearing a leather jacket, some jeans that fit, and like some pointed shoes. I wasn't sure if they were boots or not. But so I'm watching, and he's way across the way, and he's not facing me. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to see tattoos. And this is, like I said, just a few years ago, right? I paroled in December 9th, 2005, but I'm looking and I'm trying to get a read on who he runs with. Not because I'm banging, not because I have any intention on pressing him. I have no intention of starting a conflict with anybody. I never go outside with that intention, right? But for my own security, I'm trying to know. Because then if this dude sees me, is he going to come up to me? There is a history of Northerners and Woods getting into it. There's a history of me getting into it with Woods. So I'm like, you just never know. And I felt like it was a very untrustworthy, potentially, troublesome situation. So I'm checking and I'm looking. I'm like, man, but I'm not trying to like mean mug the fool because I don't want to instigate. I don't want to give him a reason to act some type of way that I'm gonna act some type of way and it's gonna go up, right? But so I'm looking and I'm looking away, doing my thing. And then I catch him kind of looking, but I can't really see his face. I was like, what? Then they call us, right? They say, hey, you guys, your kids are out. So we go walking towards this elevator. And my ex was already kind of on me, like, man, why you keep pressing that dude? Why you tripping off that dude? Do you know that dude? And so I was like, just relax. Just trying to figure out who's in the room. That's all. And so we go walking and we got to go around to the corner. And he, comes around the corner, gets by the elevator. And at this point now, I can see him. My vision ain't the best anyway. But now I can see him. And I'm like, that looks familiar. And I look down and we had stickers, little visitor stickers with your name on it. And I look and I see the sticker. And I was like, hey, are you so-and-so? Who it was Biggie, right? I used the name that we knew each other by in prison. We were neighbors in the Pelican Bay Zoo for a long time. He is from the north, right? To put it mildly. We were both validated at the same time back there. We was neighbors. We talked, very often for years through the door, all that shit.
He is talking about how he is at the hospital and he sees a guy. And this guy is white, and he goes, I'm trying to look at his tattoos. He had a leather jacket. I'm checking him out. I'm looking, and I'm looking away. Then my old lady's like, why are you pressing that dude? Why are you looking at him? And he's like, I see this dude. He's white. He's got tattoos. I'm looking, and I'm looking away, and I'm looking again, and I'm peeping him out, and I'm wondering if I'm in danger. And then I get kind of close, and I recognize the guy. Oh, and it turns out to be another white Norteño that I know from prison. And we start talking. Another white Norteño said, man, I was checking you out. I was thinking you was one of them. So, dude, that's hilarious. I wish I had that on video, bro. I would love to see two white Norteños, one over here, and they're staring at each other. They're peeking around the corner. Oh, who's that guy? Is he going to get me? You got these two white Norteños checking each other out, scared, wondering if they're in danger. Even his old lady had to say, why you keep looking at that dude? He's looking, he's scared, and they get close enough to go, just another white Norteño. What's up, bro? Well, I was really nervous there for a minute. I thought you were one of them.
and I hadn't seen him since we were last in prison. He paroled right after me, but we never crossed paths in the streets. But he had this YouTube channel called The Working Ex-Con, right? And he starts a channel. He don't really post too much, but so I consider him a friend. Like he was my homie from prison, but it was cool to see him. And and since then we've hung out a bunch. I've been at his house, been around his family, everything else. You know, his family is not a white family, right? But that's just how he looks, and very much with the activities, they very much on behalf of the homeboys. And so I see, but I called him by that name, right? Which he doesn't use that on here, so I'm not gonna use it. I don't think it's a big fucking secret, but he goes by Biggie, so we'll say Biggie. And he looks, Rascal, like man, and we shake hands and we hug, man, like two long lost homeboys that ain't seen each other in years because that's what we are. And I was like, oh, bro, I'm about to fucking get you. I thought you was one of them, right? And he's like, man, I was trying to, basically he was doing the same thing. Like I was trying to check for you. Like I seen the tattoos, but I couldn't make them out from there. And I was like, man, who is this fool? And part of it was the looking kind of familiar, something familiar about this guy, but I can't place it. And that can be dangerous. That can be dangerous because if you don't remember why somebody's familiar, you may be reminded and it may not be nice. So both of us were on the same type of time. We both had a laugh about it.
Nervous there for a minute. I thought you were one of them. I thought I was going to really have to handle some business or kick off running or call the cops or something. So I couldn't finish it, bro. I stopped at the 30-minute mark. I didn't even keep going. The whole video was straight up trash.
But it showed me like, damn, bro, I'm all these years later, and I still got a chip on my shoulder. Now, I do what I got to do to protect my environment and to secure myself. I don't walk around with the same level of heightened awareness as I did in prison. That it's like I said, it's not sustainable, right? Got enough mental health issues already. I add to it, but I did, man. I had to check myself, and him and I actually had a conversation about it after that, and I was like, "Fool, this is wild, and it's not reasonable. It's not realistic, right? It's not legitimate, because since I've been home from prison, I've talked to a bunch of white dudes that did time, and said I'm seen a dude at college, right? That was from Southern California. He's a white dude. He's like Polish or something, but he's from Southern California, and he grew up a Southsider. Was in his neighborhood the whole nine, Southsidered out, right? He was, he was with the shit. He's in YA, and at some point in YA, they decide he can't be a Southsider, and they pack him out, right? Because he's a white guy, and maybe there's more to it. I don't know. That's his story that he's telling me. I don't think it really matters. They pack him out, and he gets dropped level or whatever. However that shit works for them. And so he later on winds up going to prison, and he runs wood in prison. And I remember telling him when he was telling me this, man, how was that? Like you're a Southsider, now you gotta go to prison. You're around all these woods, talking all racist all the time, and all this other stuff, which I don't know for sure. I'm just speculating that they're just using racial slurs constantly when they talk. Probably not, but in my mind, since I'm already hating on them, basically, that's where I'm at. And he's like, oh no, bro, weird. I jumped full in. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'll bit into that mentality as well. And I was like, well, this is weird, but I've talked to white dudes that have done time, and some of them are good friends, right? And white dudes that weren't racist in the streets and didn't push a racist agenda in prison, but you got to go with the flow. You're not going to change the program. Nobody's bigger than the program, right? So they went to the joint and they rock with their people and they did what they had to do to endure that world. And honestly, from no pun intended, but from a convict's perspective, it's not my place to fault anybody for doing what they got to do to survive an environment that we weren't made to survive, man. To each their own. You all got to figure out your own way, just like I did, right? And so they did it, right? And others that were very much on that hype, right? Who now are not, and maybe because they matured, just like I'm not on the same hype I was, in terms of all that stuff and the movement and the cause and the agenda I don't think the same now, right? We get older, we think better, and so I'm not on that page, and so some of these dudes aren't either. And I really think I'm much more past that now. But again, I've been asked this question a lot, and so I wanted to kind of answer it.
The whole video is trash, and I'm convinced he's scared of woods. That's why when he's seen those two woods at Slinger's Valley, and they asked him, hey, who are you? What are you? He ignored them. Kept going. Then he gets out of prison. He's like looking around. Is there any woods here? Every time he goes to the store looking for a wood, Then he's at the hospital and he sees the white guy with tattoos and he's like, oh, a wood. Turns out just to be a Nathaniel. Calm down. You don't have to get scared. Just a Nathaniel. So this guy disrespecting us, calling us dirty. Lie. He disrespected us saying that we sleep in bed with our shoes on. Lie. He disrespected us saying that we go to the yard and take our shoes off. Lie. And he said, hey, the reason why I didn't have a problem with the Southsiders is because they never pressed me. They never stared at me crazy. They never talked to me crazy. Oh, but the Woods did? And the reason why I never had problems with the blacks, even though they didn't take care of themselves, he said, is because they never pressed me. They never looked at me crazy. They never talked to me crazy. Oh, and the Woods did? So now we're getting, that's why we're here, folks. That's what his whole video is all about. That's why he doesn't like whites, because they scare him. The woodpile flat out scares him. His words, not mine. He said he was totally fearful of them. Always looking behind every door, looking behind every corner. He's scared when they try to jam up at Salinas Valley. He ignored them. So I don't even know what to say, bro, at this point. Other than this dude's a straight up J-Cat. I'm going to cut the string and let it fly. Peace.
If you didn't have that stuff in you when you went in there, you're either going to learn that and get on that page and find where you fit in, or you're going to get rolled the fuck over. That's just the reality of it. That's how it was, at least. And everybody, like I said, got to figure out the role. So, shout out. There's a lot of white dudes that watch this channel. And I appreciate them, and I appreciate their feedback, and got no issue with them. And racist is probably a strong term, because it wasn't like I just came out hating white people, but having a chip on my shoulder and being very judgmental about particularly white men that have been to the joint or look like they kicked with people that have been to the joint between the ages of like 20 and 50, right? Yeah. And again, very judgmental, making assumptions about people. It would run across folks. Say, oh yeah, man, I was in prison and I automatically now think of you a certain way just because I'm looking at your skin color. Right. And that shit's crazy. It's crazy for anybody to do. It doesn't fit. Just because somebody says they were this in prison doesn't mean you know how they're gonna act, right? Anyways, I can go on and on, but it's not a live; it's actually a video. So let me cut this a little bit, shorter, I guess, than it could be. But anyways, man, shout out the Woods, shout out all the solid white people that have shown me love. Those that haven't shown me love, that's fine too. And again, it's based on stereotypes, but that's where hate comes from. Hate comes from stereotypes and stigmas and all that shit, right? Limited interactions and not knowing but making assumptions, which is what I did all the time because I'm looking at a group I'm not a part of. I'm not in that group. And they're looking at me the same fucking way. So